By listening to this podcast, you agree to not use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in yourself or others, including, but not limited to, patients that you are treating. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Neuroendocrine Cancer Awareness Network be responsible for damages arising from use of this podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to Let's Get Real with NCAN. I'm super excited today because we're in person. We are in Miami, and we usually don't do these in person, but we are at Miami to doing the NCAN Net Patient Conference at the University of Miami, and we're just outside in Coral Gables. Before we get into Roger Jones here, I do want to remind everybody that this month we are going to be in New Orleans, Louisiana. Roger's going to be there too, correct?
I may not be able to. That is, okay. May the 18th is my 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, okay.
And I thought maybe my wife would like to go to New Orleans, but I think I'm going to get vetoed.
Oh, okay.
So that you know how that works.
Well, if you want to go, please head over to netcancerawareness.org, where you can find all the registration links and all the information. We're going to be in New Orleans in May. And we're going to be in Nashville in September. So
wonderful.
Keep an eye out. And of course, we always have these podcasts coming up every month. Again, if you need any more information, go to netcancerawareness.org and also check us out on social media at netcanceraware. So today we have Roger Jones, not only a NET patient, but an author as well. Has a brand new book. It just came out by the time this is out. Called The Final Victory, and we're going to talk a little bit about his diagnosis and also the book and how his diagnosis fits into the book as well. So Roger, you know my family for a very long time.
Yes, I do have. And they're wonderful people.
Thank you. They're pretty good. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your story, your diagnosis, and what brought you to the NET community?
Well, I was diagnosed with neuroendocrine cancer. We actually called it carcinoid back then in 2005. And my tumors were kind of typical. My primary was in the small intestine. And it spread to my lymph nodes into my liver. And I did surgery to remove the primary tumor in the lymph nodes, but I had a lot of them in my liver. So they didn't feel like they could do surgery at that time in my liver. And they took the approach like a lot of doctors did back then. I think it was more so then than now, just the watch and see approach. Yep. And for a couple of years, they acted typically like carcinoid or neuroendocrine tumors, and they didn't have hardly any growth. But in 2009, my tumors just started to grow. My largest tumor in the dome of my liver grew from about 4 centimeters to 7.5 centimeters, which is about the size of a small grapefruit. And I had them throughout all regions in my liver. And I had some extreme pain when it showed up. I had some extreme abdominal pain. My wife took me to the emergency room, and that's when they saw the rapid growth that I experienced. My local oncologist at that time really just told me that I don't think there's anything we can do. I don't think there's any doctor here. This is in Charleston, South Carolina, that could treat you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then in terms of your treatment, how did that proceed?
So I didn't take that very well. He gave me the quality of life versus quantity of life discussion, and I wanted a little bit of both. So my wife and I began a journey, much like your mom and dad have done exactly the same thing. We went to Omaha, Nebraska, for a liver transplant evaluation. Went to MD Anderson. Went to a number of other hospitals, and finally we decided to to look into PRRT, which was only being, well, it wasn't only being, but it wasn't here in the United States.
Right,
and,
it was over
and we
in Europe.
felt like the best spot to go at that time was Bad Berka, Germany. And you're familiar with that facility.
Yes.
and so forth. So we had scans done, and it looked like I would be a good patient for that. So in 2009 is when I took my first trip to East Germany for PRRT, and went there 4 times over the next several years, and that worked. It worked pretty well. My tumors typically would decrease about 20-25%.
Okay.
And seemed like I would have maybe 18 months or so before they began to grow again, which was good.
Yeah.
Which was good. So, but each time I went, we'd do a gallium-68 scan, and after the 4 years, the physician there, the doctor there, was convinced that all of my tumors were isolated to my liver, and they were developing some other liver-specific treatments then. So I decided to take that route.
Okay. All right. And have you stayed on that route since 2009 or?
Yeah, actually about 2012, 13, I did sear spears with radiation, and I kind of had a similar result I did with PRRT, but the interventional radiologist in Charleston at the Medical University of South Carolina felt like I could benefit from chemoembolization. So in 2013, he did a treatment of chemoembolization, and for me it worked. My wife and I, I had the treatment. We went back to him, and a month later had an MRI, and he came in his room and pulled my scan up on TV, and he said, "Look," he said, "they're all gone." Wow. And we just started crying. I mean, it was just, it was like a miracle to me. But he said, "I don't believe the scan." He said, "I want to do another one next week." So I did 3 of those, and 3 treatments, did a scan after each month, same result. And then I started doing scans every quarter, and then every 6 months, and every year. And just a few years ago, the medical university, he called me and said their tumor group had met and felt like I was done.
Wow.
So I hadn't had anything done in the last couple of years. So I feel obviously very blessed.
That's great. Now, you were dealing with this for 19 years or so. So for new patients, what do you think is the first thing they do?
Well, it's from the point of diagnosis, it's just my opinion, and it's not a medical opinion. I would highly recommend at least 2 opinions, maybe 3. And you know yourself, Mike, I mean, working with your mom and dad, of the different opinions that are in different camps of how to treat neuroendocrine cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of the things I highly recommend, is getting at least 2, if not 3, really good neuroendocrine physicians' opinion, and see what the consensus begins to be, and get some good scans. And so they could really, the gallium-68 scans, they've got some more advanced scans now that they're looking at doing, and so really see where the tumors are, and that begins to give you some idea of what course of treatment that the physician would look to do. But I'm a strong believer in especially with our group of cancer patients, we have to be our own advocate. I mean, we've got to take it in our hands and study and research and get some other doctor's opinion, and that would be my
number 1
first advice. Yeah, number 1.
In terms of like a hint or trick, right? So a newly diagnosed patient, what's something that you've taken from your years with dealing with it, but not necessarily a widely known tip or trick to dealing with quality of life or anything like that? But do you have any kind of tips for a newly diagnosed patient, or even it could be something that's obvious but just need that reminder?
Once my approach was more aggressive.
Sure.
And not every physician who treats neuroendocrine patients necessarily agreed with my approach. I really wanted to treat the tumors. So that's when I really began to look at things, and I really wanted to aggressively pursue what course of action I could do, and not wait anymore.
Sure.
The PRRT, the chemoembolization, the sear spears, I thought all of those could be good options for me. Some physicians will continue to take that wait and see approach, and they feel like they want to hold certain treatments for when it gets worse.
Right.
And for me personally, that just never felt comfortable. But that's a personal decision, highly personal decision between the patient and the doctor, and then the patient has to make their own decision on that. But that was, my course. And then the other thing that I felt like was important with me was exercise. Mm-hmm. Keep doing something to being active in life and exercise, and it seemed to help me deal with it physically and mentally.
I feel like that's a big thing that people sometimes overlook. Because it when you are working out, when you are active, when you are exerting yourself a little bit, it helps with your anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything like that. So, yeah, absolutely. Now, you're talking about exercise. It's going to kind of bring us into your book here,
yes.
The Final Victory, which is, I'm very excited to dig in.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
So, we're recording this before it's out, so that's the only reason why I haven't read it yet. But, no, I'm very excited about it. It's a cool, very cool concept. I know that it has to do with row team.
Dragon boat team.
Uh-huh. Yep. And, the struggles of those teammates and stuff like that. And I know that it's loosely based on your personal experience. So tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. It's after my diagnosis, I was introduced to the Dragon Boat Club in Charleston, South Carolina, and at that time they were, for the most part, focusing on breast cancer patients. And in the United States and Canada, the Dragon Boat phenomenon, if you want to call it that, began in the mid-90s with a surgeon in Vancouver, who was treating a lot of breast cancer patients. And at that time, they felt like exercise was not positive as far as breast cancer patients and as far as their lymphatic system. And he didn't believe them. And he put this team together, put a study together, and after a couple of years, the women just did great. Every aspect of their treatment and surgery, and it became a support group, and it was just like you guys do support groups. Sure. How important that is. So it was proven that the exercise was very beneficial. Right. So the sport just began to explode. And so I started paddling about 2008 in the Dragon Boat. And the Dragon Boat's a 40-foot boat with 20 paddlers, 10 on the right, 10 on the left, with a steers person in the back and a drummer on the front. So, and now there's races all over the country. There's several hundred thousands of people here in the United States. That
you see it on ESPN all the time.
Yeah, so it's grown a ton. So anyway, in 2010, we decided in Charleston we wanted to put a team together, an all cancer team, to see if we could compete at the national championships. And we really didn't feel like we had much of a chance to really win. But we ended up winning the national championship in our division. It was a division of over 50, age of 50, and it was a mixed division where we had 12 men and 8 women in the boat. And we actually earned the right to represent the United States in that division in Hong Kong the next year. But we weren't able to go because we did have some pretty sick people in the boat, and we had a number of them pass away, and that kept us from going to Hong Kong the next year. But it was really just a great story of a group of very courageous people who were sick and overcame it and actually won the national championship.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It was.
So you got into this. You've been active all your life, but you've never been into this dragon.
Nope. Never heard of it until I saw it on TV, and they had a festival there in Charleston. They had just started the club, and the news TV did a little segment on it. I said, "Wow, I think I'd like to try that." So
that's great.
So I called them up, and they invited me down, and and I just fell in love with it. It was, and if I'm going to exercise, if I can be on the water and exercise, even that much better.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that being on the water and doing something versus standing on a treadmill, it's a lot more appealing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's definitely a lot more appealing.
Yeah.
Now, writing a book it's a big undertaking. It's a huge undertaking. Do you have any prior experience writing and stuff like that? Or?
Well, after I had the conversation with my local oncologist about the quality of life versus quantity, and I went to Germany, and there the PRRT treatment, they gave you both the yttrium 77 or yttrium lutetium 177 and yttrium 90
Y90.
both, or the Y90 both. And they would quarantine you in the room for 48 hours.
Right.
So I'm in this room, can't go out, nobody can come in. So, and I was really debating, just like many of us when we have a cancer diagnosis, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I woke up one morning in Germany, and it was clear as a bell in my head. I said, I want to be a writer. Now, you got to understand, Mike, I was a PE major in college, so I didn't do a lot of writing. So I came back and started going to classes and courses and conferences and seminars, and it actually took me about 10 years to really get this book. I had a number of other projects I wrote that were some okay, some very bad, and then finally I got to the place where I could get this book on paper, and found an agent, and she sold it to a publisher in New York, and it's going to be the publication date's April 30th.
It's fantastic. That's great.
Well, thank you.
Are you? You said you were a PE major, but are you a creative? Before that, were you a creative person?
Well, to some degree. I mean, I wasn't an artist or anything like that, but just in my life, I think I had certain levels of creativity, and I always loved to read. So I was a reader.
Yeah.
And that I think led me to having the desire to maybe write.
Mm-hmm. How cathartic was this book to write?
Well, when I started writing, I wrote a book. It took me about 5 years to write the first one, and it was absolutely, completely horrible. It's stuck away in a drawer in my bedroom, and nobody should ever read it or see it.
Well, as a songwriter, I have another podcast as well. We talk a lot about songwriting, and it's like, if you haven't written 25 terrible songs when you first start, you're not doing it right.
You're not doing it. You're not learning. Yeah. So then I wrote another book, and it was about a journalist, and it turned out pretty good. And that's where I met my agent, and but my wife kept telling me, she said, "You need to write the book about this dragon boat team," and I didn't feel like I could do it, and I didn't feel like I could give it justice, and so I got this book done, and we had it edited, and she felt like it was at the place she could start sending it to publishers. And I went to her and approached her. I said, "Well, but this is the book I really want to write. Is this book about this team that meant so much to all of us, and it was really, really personal. And at that time, I felt like I was ready, mentally and with the ability to actually write the book."
That's great. A little bit of a fun question. This is based on your experience. Are there any characters in the story that exist in real life that have read your book and kind of went, "Hey, you really think I'm like that?"
Yeah. There's really like 5 main characters in the story because I had to focus.
Sure.
And 3 of those have since passed. They passed away early on, and they were major part of our team. One of the ladies that is one of the characters, she's the breast cancer survivor, and she still lives there in Charleston. And I asked her to read it beforehand, and she liked it. She said, "Yeah, that pretty much represents me. That's not." But the protagonist is loosely based on me, and it's probably 70% accurate. But the other characters are probably 90% or more accurate to what they were in real life. But I did have each one of the surviving spouses read the book before I even sent it to my agent to make sure they were comfortable with it, and they felt good with it.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So you got the book. It's coming out. Do we have an audio book on the horizon?
The audio book's being done. The ebook's already on, all that's on Amazon now. It can be pre-ordered. The Final Victory, and it's on Amazon. It can be pre-ordered, and we also have a pre-order page that's set up just for NCAN, where we're individuals who want to support NCAN can go to this link and order the book. It's at a 30% discount from Amazon, and my publisher will donate $5 per book that's actually purchased to NCAN. Mm-hmm. So we've got that set up, and I can give you that link, and it can. Awesome. And I certainly encourage everybody to use it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. We appreciate that. The link will be below in the description if you're on the YouTube page or if you're on a podcast streaming platform. Just go right underneath to the description, and we'll have that stuff there. When's the movie coming out? This sounds like a story that's made for a movie.
Let me share with. I would like to share how the name of the title of The Final Victory came about. Is one of our paddlers, a good friend. He was he's the Hall of Fame running back at the Citadel, which is a military college university there in Charleston. And he had jaw and neck cancer, and he'd had a number of very difficult surgeries. So he couldn't eat. He had a feeding tube, had a trach. He could barely speak, and he was having a hard time making our practices. And I went to him and asked him, "What do you think?" His name in the book is Thomas, but his real life name was Bob. I said, "Bob, what do you think?" And he grunted. He said, "I got to do it." He said, "This could be it. This could be my final victory." So I knew the name of the book before I really sat down and started writing it, and it was to really honor him and what he accomplished. So, but we met with a movie producer just about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, So. I don't, they like the story.
Yeah.
And that's about all I know. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That was a almost rhetorical question, almost a joke question, but it sounds like it's something that's ready made for that type of thing. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody, keep your fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
Where can they find everything? The Final Victory.
Well, it's a Final Victory. You can go to Amazon and order it. You can go to Barnes & Noble and order it. So it's available. It will be available starting May in bookstores. So they can just go to the local bookstore. And then if they want to order it from the link that we set up with with NCAN, then they can order it from that link, and it'll be shipped to them the same way it would be with Amazon. And then they can choose NCAN for the donation from my publisher. So they can get it from basically any source that any book can be bought. And the audio book, we're working on it. I'm not sure it's going to be out by April 30th, but it'll be soon.
That's great. Roger, thank you so much for sharing your story. Mike. Thank you for the book. I'm excited to read it. I'm sure our watchers and listeners here are excited to read it. Please check out The Final Victory. It's on sale now. Of course, again, if you have any questions, if you want to attend another NCAN event, please make sure to go to netcancerawareness.org or go to our social medias at netcanceraware, and we will see you next time on Let's Get Real.